My childhood was pretty normal, other than the fact that we were surrounded by a lot of alcohol. DUIs were a common topic. I never took them seriously because I always thought it was like a speeding ticket. But as soon as I graduated high school and I turned 18, I moved to Columbus with my high school boyfriend. I just went out there to party and get away from my family so I could drink and not have my mom worried about me. Spring of 2013, I broke up with my high school boyfriend. And about a month after we broke up, I started dating another guy, and he lived in Colorado and I still lived in Columbus. After about a year of us dating like that, he told me that the airline that he worked for was hiring. So I applied spring of 2014 and I got the job basically on the spot and moved to Colorado within like 2 weeks. So then I worked for the airline and dated that guy from 2014 to 2020. Anybody who's ever worked for the airline industry also knows it's a huge party atmosphere. So it was drinking all the time. If we weren't drinking at work, we were drinking at the bars until they closed down. We'd have house parties after the bars closed down, and everybody was kind of on the same mentality for the most part that I was surrounded by. As soon as I moved out there in 2014, drugs were introduced as well, but pretty casually. And then after a couple of years, illegal drugs were introduced as well, not so casually. I had been sexually abused on 2 separate occasions by different people. That was something that I ended up using alcohol to cope with instead of talking to somebody. When I first moved out, when I first broke up with them and I moved maybe 5 blocks down the street because I didn't know any other neighborhoods out there other than where the airport was and where I was at. And I had been living out there for 7 years. By the fall, after I had moved out, I had been drinking really heavily. And then it was getting to the point where I would drink and stay up all night, blackout drunk, and then do drugs to wake myself back up so I could work my shift at work instead of going to bed. I quit my job in December of 2020, and then I had been already on about a 3-week bender of drugs and alcohol, and decided to keep the party going. I made it a month and a half where I just had to be drunk 24/7. On January 24th of 2021, I decided to drink all day, like normal, and I went to go see some friends. So around 11:30 at night, I'm driving back from hanging out with my friends, and I vaguely remember seeing cop car lights behind me, and I was getting pulled over. I remember getting pulled over. I remember them coming to my window, and then I blacked out. And when I came to again, I was standing outside the back of the car, and I just remember the cop saying, "Well, that's not what you told me earlier. Were you lying to me?" And I go, "Well, yeah, I probably was. I lie whenever I get nervous." We did the field sobriety tests, and the cops are really good at making you think that you're passing those tests because I was stumbling and falling, and the cops were like, great job, you're doing a great job. Okay, now let's try this one. Now say your alphabet backwards. And I failed every single one of them, 100%. And in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting away with this. These guys really think that I'm sober. And then I got cuffed. But God was with me during my entire arrest. The drunk tank was full, so I did not have to go to the drunk tank. Somebody got to take me home. And then out of nowhere, I don't know what it was, but something in me was like, call your mother. And so I called my mom. Immediately, she started telling me she started telling me how proud she was of me. And it made me so mad because I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever done. Why are you proud of me? You're not allowed to be proud of me. I know she'd been praying for me for a really long time with my drinking. So she was proud of me that I finally admitted it. Not the next morning, a couple hours later when I woke back up, I Ubered to my car and then drove to what ended up being my home group. I drove to my first AA meeting. They asked me if I wanted the 24-hour trip, which is just stating that you want to try to stay sober, and it's your pledge to try to stay sober. To this day though, it's my favorite trip because it was me finally choosing myself and deciding that I wasn't going to let this control me anymore. August of 2021 was my 6 months sober, and I had a lot of friends that were telling me that every year that they have another year under their belt, they like to do something fun. And since it was Colorado, it was always something fun outside because they're very adventurous out there, and I am not. I decided that for my 6 months I was going to do something like that. But my ex, when I first moved out there, to Colorado had told me there's this hike. It's called Hanging Lake. As soon as I started the actual hike part, I had my playlist of my favorite music going, and I was excited to have just a couple hours by myself to reflect over the past 6 months. In my head, all the negative stuff I was hearing was my ex's voice telling me, like, you're not gonna make it. I decided to drop all the anger I held with my ex on the side of the mountain. I decided to drop all of the anger and the resentment I was carrying about myself. I was talking to God the whole time and asking him to help me, because I knew that all the times that I tried to fix stuff on my own and I would make goals and make lists and everything, none of it ever worked. As I was dropping all this is when I finally decided that I'm ready to let God back into my life. For a long time, I didn't want anything to do with him, and I kept thinking that he was what religion is. And I was too afraid to go back to all of that because of everything that I had done, and I didn't think I deserved it, and I didn't think I deserved to be loved by him. And I'm so close to the top, but I was just like, I don't know if I can't climb all these stairs. Like, I'm looking up at all these stone stairs that lead to nowhere because you can't see the top from where the stairs are, and I was like, there's no way I cannot get to the top of this thing by myself. And I was able to power through. And I get to the very top, and it is just the most insane thing I have ever seen in my entire life. It's completely clear, blue water, waterfalls, there's no noise, there's no people, everything's blocked off so no people can touch it. And I just got to spend as much time as I wanted up there with God. And I just sat there for a really long time. I finally felt proud of myself for the first time. And I was so happy that I did it by myself. And I didn't go up with somebody else, and I didn't try to make a big spectacle of it. I just got to go up there and be alone with God, and I got to start my relationship with him on the top of this mountain. I want to be the person that gets to tell other people to keep going, and that the oasis you're about to see is so much more amazing than anything you could ever dream of. 2 or 3 days after the hike, I got back home, and it was all over the news that there was a giant mudslide on Hanging Lake, and it wiped out the entire trail. And so all the baggage that I was leaving during my entire hike up there all got wiped away. So it's like in the Colorado River somewhere, far, far away from me. I left all my baggage on the side of the mountain. God disintegrated it for me. Since then, I moved back home to Ohio, summer of 2022. In January will be 3 years sober for me. Over the summer of 22, I got saved with the help of my sister Jordan during the Banner Year weekend party. And then in the spring of 23, I was baptized for the first time in my life. And since moving back home, I would like to say that my life has gotten less stressful. It's just as stressful sometimes because now I get to feel all the emotions and I'm trying to do all the right things, and now I'm being back around my family versus isolating myself in Colorado has been difficult, but also completely amazing at the same time. It's just an experience I've never known because I moved away as soon as I graduated high school, so I've never really been around my family as an adult. No matter what it is, whether it's mental health, addiction, anything, no matter what it is, there's a community for it, even if it's a Facebook group. But I would say find a community. The 2 times in my entire life that my life changed 180 degrees for the better, I found a community in recovery and I found a community in Christ. And in both those situations, I found my community, I found a safe person in that community, and I listened to everything they told me to do and I dropped my pride. And I think the best thing that anybody could do if you're struggling, even if it's with something small, is find a safe person and find a sounding board and just do what they tell you to do if you trust them. And I think it's going to be an amazing outcome no matter what. My favorite verse says it best, Romans 8:18. The pain you have been feeling cannot even compare to the joy that is coming. And I promise you, if you start doing the right things, the joy will be overflowing.